The story begins with King Dalindyebo himself, a figure who has never fit neatly into South Africa's post-apartheid script. His kingship has always been political, even when it claimed not to be. From his outspoken criticism of the ANC to his public closeness to opposition movements, Dalindyebo has treated royalty not as a ceremonial inheritance but as a platform. When he moves, it is rarely symbolic alone. This is a man who understands attention as leverage, controversy as currency, and silence as strategy. One sentence defines him clearly. He does not wait to be invited. Across the traditional landscape sits King Misuzulu, a monarch whose reign began not with consensus but with contestation. His ascension followed years of internal family disputes, court challenges, and questions over legitimacy that still echo in legal corridors. For many Zulu traditionalists, his kingship is both sacred and fragile. Every alliance he forms is read not just as diplomacy, but as a statement about stability. When his name appears alongside Dalindyebo's, it signals more than courtesy. It signals calculation. Then there is Jacob Zuma, a former president who, despite leaving office under a cloud, never truly left the political bloodstream. Zuma's influence now operates in subtler ways, through cultural identity, liberation nostalgia, and a deep emotional connection with rural and traditional communities. He understands traditional leadership instinctively, not as a relic, but as a living political asset. His presence in this meeting reframes it instantly. This is no longer just a royal conversation. It becomes a political chessboard. The historical tension between royal authority and democratic power makes this moment particularly charged. Since 1994, South Africa has struggled to define where traditional leadership fits within a constitutional democracy. Kings are recognized, funded, and respected, yet ultimately subordinate to elected authority. This uneasy balance has produced friction, resentment, and occasional rebellion. When kings begin to meet political heavyweights independently, it reopens a question the Constitution never fully resolved. Who really speaks for the people? What sharpens the intrigue is timing. This meeting is not happening in a vacuum. South Africa is navigating electoral uncertainty, declining trust in institutions, and a growing appetite for alternative sources of leadership. Traditional structures, once sidelined, are regaining relevance among communities disillusioned with party politics. In that environment, a king is no longer just a custodian of culture. He becomes a vessel for protest, hope, or mobilization. Timing changes everything. Dalindyebo's motivations invite particular scrutiny. His relationship with the state has been turbulent, marked by imprisonment, presidential pardon, and public grievance. Meeting Zuma, the man who once signed his release, carries emotional and political resonance. Adding King Misuzulu into that equation transforms personal history into collective symbolism. This is no private reunion. It is a message crafted through presence alone. For King Misuzulu, the risks are equally significant. Aligning too closely with political figures can alienate factions that already question his legitimacy. Yet refusing engagement could be read as weakness or isolation. His kingship exists in a delicate balance between asserting authority and avoiding provocation. Sitting with Dalindyebo and Zuma may be an attempt to consolidate recognition beyond court rulings. Recognition, after all, is power that cannot be legislated. Zuma, meanwhile, gains something intangible but potent. Association with kings reinforces his long-standing self-image as a man of the people, rooted in tradition rather than technocracy. At a time when his formal political future remains uncertain, symbolic capital may matter more than parliamentary seats. This meeting allows him to remain central without holding office. Influence does not always need a title. The next 8 blocks, without any takeaway, continuous narrative, the setting of the meeting, whether public or private, matters less than its symbolism. In South African history, The act of meeting has often carried more weight than the outcome. Think of secret negotiations in the late apartheid era, where the mere confirmation of talks shifted national psychology. In this case, the optics alone suggest alignment, even if disagreements dominate the room. Optics create narratives. Narratives shape power. There is also an undercurrent of regional politics at play. The Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal represent two powerful traditional blocs with distinct historical grievances and political leanings. A bridge between their kings, facilitated by Zuma, hints at a broader coalition of influence that transcends provincial boundaries. Such a coalition would not contest elections directly, but it could sway them decisively. Influence can be quieter than votes. Critics warn that this kind of convergence risks undermining constitutional order. When unelected figures appear to coordinate political direction, concerns about parallel power structures resurface. Yet supporters argue the opposite, that traditional leaders are filling a vacuum left by failing institutions. This tension is not new, but it is intensifying. The meeting becomes a mirror reflecting national unease about governance itself. What remains striking is the absence of clear public messaging. No agenda was released. No joint statement preempted speculation. In modern politics, silence is rarely accidental. It allows every observer to project their fears or hopes onto the event. For some, this is the beginning of a royal political realignment. For others, it is simply a conversation dressed up as conspiracy. Ambiguity keeps everyone watching. Media reactions reveal as much as the meeting itself. Headlines oscillate between alarm and intrigue, often framing the event as either destabilizing or historic. This polarization mirrors broader societal divisions about authority and legitimacy. When kings meet politicians, journalists are forced to ask uncomfortable questions about where real power lies. Those questions have no easy answers. Within traditional leadership circles, reactions are reportedly mixed. Some welcome the assertion of relevance, seeing it as overdue recognition of indigenous governance systems. Others fear politicization that could erode cultural integrity. Kingship, after all, draws strength from continuity and ritual. Politics thrives on disruption. Balancing the two is a dangerous dance. Zuma's involvement also revives memories of his presidency, particularly his reliance on traditional symbolism to bolster political support. From cultural attire to rural rallies, he consistently blurred the line between statecraft and heritage. This meeting feels like a continuation of that strategy, adapted for a post-presidential phase. The past does not disappear. It mutates. Dalindyebo's presence adds an element of unpredictability. Unlike many traditional leaders who favor quiet diplomacy, he has embraced confrontation openly. His willingness to challenge both state and custom makes him a wildcard. In any alliance, unpredictability can be either an asset or a liability. That uncertainty alone reshapes the dynamic of the room. The next two blocks, without any takeaway, continuous narrative speculation, naturally turns to what could follow. Will this meeting lead to coordinated statements on national issues, land reform, or traditional authority? Or will it remain a singular moment, inflated by public imagination? History suggests that moments like these rarely remain isolated. They plant seeds, even if growth is slow and uneven. More importantly, the meeting forces South Africans to confront a deeper question. How many centers of power can coexist before cohesion fractures? Democracy assumes clarity of authority. Tradition thrives on layered legitimacy. When those layers intersect without clear boundaries, friction is inevitable. This gathering does not resolve that tension. It exposes it. Finishing point, without any takeaway, continuous narrative in the end, the significance of King Dalindyebo meeting King Misuzulu and Jacob Zuma may lie less in what was said than in what was implied. It is a reminder that South Africa's story is not linear, that power does not flow exclusively through ballots and courts. It also underscores how unresolved histories continue to shape present alignments. Kings, politicians, and the people they claim to represent remain bound in a complex dance of authority and expectation. Whether this meeting becomes a footnote or a turning point will depend on what follows, but its echo is already unmistakable. No announcement preceded it, no official communique, no carefully staged photograph. Yet within royal and political circles, the whisper landed like a thunderclap. King Dalindyebo was preparing to sit down with King Misuzulu and former President Jacob Zuma in the same moment, in the same political breath. In a country where kingship, party power, and historical grievance usually orbit each other at a cautious distance, this convergence felt almost unnatural. South Africa has seen many alliances, but very few that cross the fault lines of royalty, liberation politics, and unresolved personal history all at once. The silence around the meeting made it louder than any press conference ever could. What makes this meeting so unsettling is not just who is involved, but when it is happening. At a time when traditional leadership is under renewed scrutiny, when political influence is shifting from formal offices to symbolic authority, and when legitimacy itself is contested, this gathering hints at something larger than courtesy. It suggests a recalibration of power, a quiet attempt to redraw influence without elections or legislation. By the end of this story, the question will not be whether the meeting happened, but what it was really meant to unlock behind closed doors. Imagine three men, each carrying a different kind of authority, walking into the same room with no microphones present. One rules by lineage, one rules by contested inheritance, and one once ruled by the ballot. If you had to guess which voice would carry the most weight when the door closed, who would you choose, and why?